Good morning, everyone. It's me, Dr. Orlando Walters of OWDPT.com. And I'm here on the tennis courts, as you can see. And I'm here with a great player, Mr. Johnson, fantastic. And I had the opportunity to work with him. He's had a few things going on. He's a great specimen to work with. And it's a lot of joy. It brings me a lot of joy. But, I kind of asked him if he could just kind of give a little bit of information, tell him about himself, what he does, how he does it, how he has had the opportunity to maintain his high level of tennis play to, at this point, and a little bit more about that. But, enough about me talking about you. Tell me, Mr. Johnson, how's it going today?
Doing pretty good. It's a lovely Sunday out here.
Absolutely. How did you start?
I started playing because of my parents. My dad was a tennis player, so they took me out to the courts as a young kid. So I've been playing tennis since I was 12, so about 25, 26 years in total.
Okay, all right, so very active, okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was the highest level of tennis play or competition you were able to obtain?
The highest level, I played college tennis for a couple years. I also played some lower level professional tournaments, so we call them challengers and futures tournaments.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. All right, so now my question is, I could only assume in order to get to a high level such as that, you had to practice tremendously.
Absolutely.
All right, so now, apart from just the actual practicing, in my field, I'm always trying to help individuals obtain their highest level of performance, as well as help them reduce injuries and things of that nature. So what was your thought process from the beginning all the way through and how to maintain the system that you have going so you can perform optimally?
All right, well, when practicing, you always want to practice with a purpose.
Okay.
And over the years, tennis has evolved where physical training and personal fitness has become a major part of the game, like you said, for injuries, prevention, flexibility, endurance. So you can't just come out and think, okay, I'm going to play tennis on the court and that just be the only part of your training. You also have to mix in the physical aspect of training your body and maintaining your physical fitness.
Okay. So would you say something very similar to almost like cross training, where instead of overtraining one particular thing, you work on different aspects of the game in order to improve your overall game?
Absolutely. Because in order to have a strong tennis game, you have to have a strong body. And you can't just train specific parts of your body, because then you'll have muscle imbalances, which is also not good. So you want to make sure you're training and strengthening your entire core, your full body fitness. Especially with tennis, you're contorting your body in different ways. So if you have deficiencies, if one side of your body is not as strong as the other, that can cause major injuries. And as you get older, it'll also cause difficulties just in your natural aging process.
All right, so I'll tell you a little something that I've seen in my many years of working with tennis players as well as other athletes. Mm-hmm. So considering a tennis, this particular sport requires the use of one side a little more than the other. And I usually tend to see there's a lot of tightness in the forearms, for sure, the arm that's holding the racket.
Right.
But more importantly, I see tightness in the torso, the abdominal region, and I notice a tremendous amount of tightness in the hips and the hamstrings.
Yes.
So what is it that you do to minimize that as much as possible?
Warm up. Before you come out and do anything, you want to make sure you warm up. Now you'll see a lot of individuals come out with the roller balls and things like that to incorporate in their warming up process. So you do something as simple as run a couple laps around the court, jumping jacks, anything to get the blood flowing, warm your body up. And then you want to make sure you get some deep quality stretches in those areas that Dr. Walters just mentioned. So we can even show some stretches later on, but you want to make sure you touch your toes, pull your knees up to your chest. That'll really stretch the glutes out and things like that. There's a lot of stretches out there that'll really help you loosen up those areas that you feel tighten. And what's good for everyone is after they work out, you will notice what specific areas of your body feels tighter than they normally would. And that'll give you an indication of what you may want to stretch and warm up a little bit more before you start playing. Because the last thing you want to do is come out, play, get a good workout, then you wake up the next morning and one side of your body is stiff and you can't move. Now you can't go to work.
Sad story.
Sad story. It's a tragedy.
Now, he just gave fantastic advice. Stuff I've been telling individuals for many, many years. Hopefully they listen to you a little bit more than they listen to me, okay? Now, in your experience, what are nagging injuries or stuff that you've had and have tried to stay away from?
Well, fortunately, I never broke any bones or anything like that, but most common injuries for tennis players are soft tissue, tendon, muscle injuries. So tennis elbow is one that you'll hear very often, which is a pain on the outer part of the elbow. I've never gotten that, but I've gotten pain on the inside of my elbow quite often. So I think it's more, they call it golfer's elbow, but it's essentially the same thing. It's just tendonitis in different parts of your arm. I've gotten that on my dominant arm. I'm left-handed, but I've also gotten something similar on my shoulder. Those are the more common injuries because tennis, you're using your muscles, flexing them, and you're putting them in different positions that you're normally not putting them in daily life. So those tend to get sore, swelling, things like that. Ibuprofen's been my friend. But prevention, stretching, that really helps a lot. I notice if I'm more prone to feeling the tendonitis, I'm not doing strengthening exercises on my days off. Doing that strengthening work, using resistance bands, push-ups, pull-ups, just those common compound workout and forms really helps.
Oh man, he's dropping tremendous amount of knowledge right now. Okay, so he's doing my job for me, and I appreciate that. Okay, all right. So next thing, there's some subtle nuance things that a lot of people take for granted, and you named one of them. One more thing that I definitely want to make sure I add is staying hydrated.
Yes.
Most individuals play tennis outside, and it's beautiful weather. It's usually hot. You're going to sweat tremendously, and the more you dehydrate, I want everybody to understand and know this. The more you're dehydrated, is the higher chances of having unnecessary injuries, soft tissue injuries, because they lack the flexibility, they lack the bounce back that you very well need. So, do you have any tips for the people out there who want to be able to play for 8 hours a day, without pain at the end of the day?
Well, don't start out trying to play 8 hours a day. Work your way up to it. But tips for hydration: if I'm going to play a match or even just know I'm going to have a rigorous day of practice, I want to make sure I drink at least a liter of water before I come out. One of my little things I like to do is I put Celtic sea salt or Himalayan sea salt in the water to really help hydrate the body. That's a tip that I got from a trainer many years ago, because you notice a lot of athletes were just chronically dehydrated. So that's something he helps a lot of his athletes do to stay hydrated. So I've been using that, and it's helped. I've had several instances where I've cramped up on the court, and that's not something you want to go through.
No, not at all.
You don't want that smoke. But definitely hydrate, drink the water in the morning. Make sure you're staying hydrated during your workouts. So every 15, 20 minutes, make sure you're getting an adequate amount of fluid to stay hydrated. Also stretch if you need to bring out something to eat. People like bananas, apricots, things like that are high in potassium. Those are also good. Something that's not gonna really hold you down, but it'll keep some minerals and restore some of that you're losing.
Oh man, he's doing my job for me, All right, so wow. All right, so here's my question. Anything interesting you've seen on the court in terms of, I've seen some freaks of nature,
Yes.
And I've seen some very impressive athletes on the court, You see their size, you don't know how they're able to move with such speed and such agility and create so much force and power. What have you noticed in your days of playing, and how do you kind of compensate for those kind of situations?
In terms of just playing a freakishly impressive athlete?
Yes.
Well, say a little prayer. Because I'll tell you, from the time that I started playing tennis to now, you're starting to see a lot more explosive and dynamic athletes. A couple players that come to mind: Gael Monfils, Nick Kyrgios, guys like that are excessively tall for an average tennis player's stature, but they're very fast. Their reflexes are lightning fast. Their speed is top notch. So normally you would think of a smaller tennis player to be more agile and quicker, but these guys are massive. They're very dominant, physically imposing across the court, but they're also as quick as you, sometimes even faster. So it's very challenging to play with them, and that's why they're dominating, the tour. But a lot of it's also mental. Tennis is a live action chess game, so you can also outmaneuver them. Strategy comes into play, so you have to prepare for that, but that requires a lot of time on the practice court to really hone in your skills, find out what you're good at, and take advantage of your strengths and try to identify their weaknesses and see if you can exploit those. But that's more strategic.
Okay, now that's a brilliant segue. Now, in terms of the chess, and that's one of the reasons why I love tennis as much as I do, primarily because it's not just about being fast, it's not just about being strong, there's agility, but there's a tremendous amount of skill that's involved.
Yes.
And that skill is obtained with lots of practice.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to the tennis court as the chessboard, what are tips, or what is your thought process when it comes into starting that chess game with individuals who are trying to defeat you, trying to find your weaknesses, trying to stay away from your strengths? How do you approach, what is your system towards approaching the chess game known as tennis?
Wow, that's a very good question. Requires a nuanced answer. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. David and Goliath is a story we all know. You want to maximize your strengths. So in order to do that, you have to get on the practice court and know what your strengths are. Is your forehand your strength? Do you have a specific stroke with your forehand? Is your forehand cross court, forehand down the line, those things? Once you identify your strengths, play those. I see a lot of junior players come out and they want to focus on their opponent a little bit too much and try to change their game specifically to that particular opponent. The best thing I could tell you on a tennis court is play to your strengths. If you end up losing a match, make sure you lose using your strengths to their max potential while still trying to identify some weaknesses with your opponent, but don't make that your utmost focus, because then it's going to detract from your strengths. You'll find yourself trying to do things that you're normally not familiar with doing, things that you haven't practiced on the court. And if you go out in a match and try to do that, it's a recipe for disaster.
Wow. Okay. All right. Vital information once again. Now, I got another question for you. I know as time goes on, training evolves.
Yes.
You know, with the new information, technology. When you were going to, did you do any studying when it came to the players that you're potentially going to play? Did you study them in terms of, or it had to be real-time analysis on the court?
It's a little bit of both. If you have the opportunity to watch your opponent play, if you're playing in a tournament, for example, if you can see who it is that you might potentially play in the next round, you will try to go and watch them and just get an idea. But for the most part, it's going to be you and your coach really focusing on what it is that you did good in your last match, what you could improve on, and then really trying to hone that. That's really the key factor. As you get more advanced as a tennis player, then yes, there's definitely tape, because if you're on the pro tour, for example, you have a lot more tape of your opponents. If you're just a recreational player, you're not going to have that luxury. So the focus is really going to be on identifying what it is that you do well and maximizing that, because your opponent is going to be at the same disadvantage.
Gotcha.
They're
Makes
not going to
sense.
know
Makes
what it
sense.
is that you do well. So if you focus on your execution and doing what you do well, now it becomes a one-on-one chess match on the court to see who can figure it out the most.
Oh, okay.
That's the most important thing.
Okay. All right. Now, my next question is, now when it comes to the evolution of training for tennis,
Yes.
how would you say, I'm an 80s baby, but kind of grew up in the 90s, okay? So how would you say training is different from 20, 30 years ago as opposed to now?
I'd say it's across the board with all sports. The improvement of training, quality of equipment, the information that we have available, the science of nutrition and exercise, and just the body itself, especially kinesiology, that has advanced tenfold over the last 10, 15 years. So with that, the training has advanced as well. So now you're seeing a lot more techniques on resistance bands, different types of CrossFit activities that other athletes are incorporating into their workouts to really help strengthen their overall fitness level. And that's really improving the level of athletes. You see it in sports as the NFL, the NBA. The athletes now, they're coming out of college just freakishly more athletic than they were before. And a lot of that has to do with their training, nutrition, and things like that.
Wow. Okay. Well, you touching on it. Again, he's doing my job for me, and I thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So one more thing that kind of stokes me, gets me really excited, is Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson has a fantastic, I believe it's called a kick serve. Okay.
He's embellishing.
Now, the reason why I kind of bring this up is because I love just the science of everything and how it moves. And when he strikes the ball in the way that he does, it's pretty much, for me, it's a guessing game. All right, the ball moves in very awkward positions, but he's going to give me the opportunity to kind of show and then kind of get behind the science of it and see where he hits the ball and how he gets to operate the way it does. That's what gets my brain going. That's what gets me pumping. So when you have the opportunity, he's going to show me how to do that.
Yes.
I greatly appreciate it. And Mr. Johnson, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. And I can't wait to do a couple more stuff. You show me everything that you have to teach, and more for me to learn.
You want to have him ready for the pro tour.
Hopefully. All right, you guys have a good one.
Take care.
All righty.